Well, the climate summit does come a decade since the landmark Paris Agreement was signed. To look at what has changed and what progress has been made, our environment editor, Valérie Dekimpe, joins me on set. Good to see you, Valérie. So, when countries signed that Paris Agreement, they pledged to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Where are we now?
Well, the data tells a sobering story. First of all, if you look at global greenhouse gas emissions, so planet warming gases, emissions are still rising. They've climbed by about 34% since the first climate conference in 1995. But they're not rising as fast as they were. So in the 30 years before the first summit, they rose by 64%. Now, what's happened exactly since the Paris Agreement was signed? I want to show you a chart where you can see our current trajectory. So the world is currently on track for 2.5 degrees of warming if countries stick to their current policies. If before the Paris Agreement was signed, we were on track for 4 degrees Celsius of warming by the end of the century. You can call this progress. You can say it's avoiding the worst case scenario, but in either way, things are not looking as good as they should because temperatures are also rising. The last 10 years have been the hottest on record. So global temperatures surging even past the 1.5 degrees threshold in some years, 2023, 2024, ranking among the hottest on record. 2024, for example, you saw there an average of 1.6 degrees Celsius. That being said, that does not mean the overarching goal of the Paris Agreement of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees has been breached because the deal essentially looks at a 30-year rolling average. And if you take that into account, we are still below 1.5. So the overall conclusion, you could say, is that the Paris Agreement has slowed global warming, but not to a level considered safe.
Well, Valerie, those numbers very much paint a bleak picture. What about renewables and green technology? Have we made any progress there?
Well, from an energy perspective, the world today looks nothing like what it looked like 10 years ago, making considerable progress in the development of renewable energy. There's been a steady growth in solar and wind power to the point that we are now investing more in clean energy than fossil fuels. So $2.2 trillion in 2024 for clean energy compared to $1 trillion in 2024 for fossil fuels. Now, electric vehicles, just the sight of an electric car 10 years ago was something quite unusual. Now, last year, 1 in 5 cars sold was actually electric. Speaking to Reuters, Jennifer Morgan, Germany's former climate envoy and a COP veteran, said, they could not have dreamed of that 10 years ago. But now it's happening. And it's happening in part thanks to the Paris Agreement setting a goal and setting the direction. So essentially a political signal that that is where we are heading. And this is something that you can't easily quantify, but it's a shift in attitudes. That being said, of course, it's not perfect because the rise in renewables and electric vehicles has essentially come to offset new demand for power, but it has not replaced fossil fuels.
Well, this is now the 30th COP30 climate summit. And many people are going to be wondering whether climate summits really serve a purpose. Can the world do without them, do you think?
Right. Well, I think there's a broad consensus, even within those deeply involved in the COP process, that yes, it is imperfect. It is slow. It's not moving fast enough, but it's the one we've got. I think, saying that COPs are useless because flawed, it's like saying, democracy is an imperfect model. Let's try the autocratic model. The COP process is the one we've got, and it's the best option we have if we want to bring everyone to the negotiating table to essentially work on a global solution for a problem that requires a global response. And some observers, however, have called for systemic reform. Christiana Figueres, the former UN climate chief, who was in Paris for COP21 when the Paris Agreement was signed, she is arguing that the COP system should consider a voting approach like the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, instead of the current consensus-based voluntary model. The COP process is not coercive. You can't force countries to do things. But again, the fact that The COP process has survived a pandemic, geopolitical turmoil, two Trump terms, terms in which the United States, the biggest polluter, the second largest polluter in the world, exiting the Accord. The fact that it has survived all of that, it shows you that countries are still very much committed to the goal and committed to a multilateral response to climate change.
Valérie, great to get that analysis from you. Thank you so much for that. Valérie Dekimpe, our environment editor there.